Hello, everybody. I'm Sean Patrick Leonard, and I was the director of Closed for the Weekend.
Oh.
Hi. I'm Cedric Thomas Smith. I'm responsible for that comedy retirement day.
I'm Ben Richardson. I was the geeky guy in assisted living.
Casey Engel, one of the directors of Assisted Living.
And I'm David Journey. I was the producer of Assisted Living.
So glad you're all here. So I'm going to ask you just a couple questions, and then we'll let you all go for it. Okay, Sean, we were just talking about your film, actually, on the way down the hall, and I was like, okay. Because it took me a while. I was like, who is bad and who is good? I mean, you nailed that, because I'm the whole time like, oh, that poor lady. Then I'm like, wait a second. Then I just went back and forth the whole thing. So where did this come from in your mind? Did you write this as well?
I did not, actually. So I'm from Chicago, Illinois, and there is a great group there called Talus Films. They actually were the producers behind this. They put together a project a couple of years ago, right before the pandemic, called the 12 for 12 Project, which was 12 films in 12 months. So they got 12 different directors, and they produced all 12 of the pieces. So some were music videos, things like that. So one of their main producers / directors, they came to me asking me to direct for them. And I was like, that's great. You know, I have a couple of ideas here and there. And he said, I actually wrote something that I'd like you to take a look at. And so I read it. And I really liked the ambiguity of it all, you know. But there were a couple of notches that I wanted to kind of bring it up. So, like, things like the timestamp and the countdown timer, things like that, you know, to kind of give that feeling of we're on a deadline and we don't know who necessarily the good guys or the bad guys are. I used to play a game. I'm predominantly an actor, and we used to play a game called Hunter Hunted. It's a blindfold game where you basically, you know, in a room you have to like rush towards a weapon, which is, you know, a, you know, rolled up newspaper, but you have to hunt your prey with your eyes closed, and your prey has to get to a safe zone with their eyes closed. So that was kind of like some of the precipice towards this. I was like, we don't know who the hunter and who the hunted necessarily is. So that was kind of where it all came from, and the fact that we leave you wanting more was all, you know, a part of it. So awesome. That's where it came from.
Well, we loved it.
Thank you.
All right, Cedric.
My gosh.
This beautiful, amazing film. My question is, personally, how was it to film that ending scene? It's so, just seeing it again, I'm like, oh, with the actors. Was that hard for you to direct? Were they just great working with each other? How was that?
Well, we're with Retirement Day. The day we shot it, it was one of those production. Everyone in the crew and the cast had something personal going on, so we shouldn't have really shot that day. My producer Patsy, her mom died, and we were shooting in her house. Bill's nephew died, and the funeral was that day. We had like a lot of drama going on, so it was kind of one of those where it was like we should not do this, but then it was one of those where it was like, let's just turn this pain into some art. And the final scene, I mean, they just had a connection, Bill and Deanna. That was the first time we even met each other.
Oh, wow.
And so, yeah, it was a lot of crying going on that day.
It worked well for this, though. Awesome. Ben, this is probably my favorite role of you ever. Now, I'm not saying you should play a nerd all the time, but you do it so well in this. So how did you get involved with this project, and how was it? I mean, it's a great 20-minute fun film, and I love it. It's sweet and funny, which is always my favorite kind of thing to watch.
Well, half the wardrobe was mine. So no one says I was acting that much. No, I met David Journey at a different film festival, actually, and it to me it proves that going to film festivals and networking and getting to know other filmmakers is so important. And I auditioned for the role, and I ended up getting the role, and with David Lee Anderson, who was positively fantastic, and we had always wanted to work with one another in the juxtaposition between our characters and then finding that common thread It was interesting though because I had to kind of dive into parts of nerddom that I hadn't before, and just. But a lot of it was just literally them letting David and I riff. So much kind of ad lib, like motion and stuff in the park. People were those might have been actual observers, just being like, "What are those guys doing?" But it was a lot of fun and a great script, and I was very privileged to be a part of it.
So how was it producing and directing? Did everything come together easily here? Who got this together, I guess?
So this project started as part of a course I teach at Oklahoma Christian University, and so one of the students in the class had the idea and wrote the script, and then he and Casey directed the script. It came together fairly easily. That's not to say we didn't have some issues during the shooting of it. There were some very late nights on at least one of the nights.
Everyone's nodding, like, ha ha, we know.
I always felt bad because Ben had given such a great performance throughout the film, and the last scene, he just had nothing left to give, really, I think, what he wanted to give in that last scene. And I think it works the way it was put together. It works well, but because of some stuff that had gone on earlier and having to give so much earlier, he was kind of tapped out a little bit and tired, exhausted as we all were. But I don't think it shows that much on screen.
No, I didn't get that yet.
What was it like directing, Casey?
Yeah, Casey would.
It was great. Had a really good time working with the actors and working with Mitch.
Mitch was the other director.
Yeah, I just really enjoyed getting to work with everyone. It was a really good experience. I felt like I learned a lot.
Good deal. All right, do you guys have any questions about these films? Yeah.
Did any of you think of like expanding it into something bigger? Your short project, did any of you think of like, oh, I'd love to add more to it?
With retirement day, I probably think that's about.
Cedric has no more to get with that. Sean, what about you?
I feel
actually.
that's
we
the one
could've-
I was wondering.
He was like, go.
I'm trying to convince Talis that this would be a really cool, setup for a series, kind of thing. In that whole Twin Peaks / kind of, we don't need. I was like, we can go sci-fi with this thing, and all
There's
of this
a lot
kind
of
of
room
stuff.
to grow it.
Yeah, so, and they're like, ha, 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 yeah, we don't know. And then, the pandemic hit, and we never really touched base on it, but I was always like, if we get into any festivals, let's just tell them, like, yes, this is the beginning of something, kind of thing. So I kind of say that a little bit, with the hopes of expansion, but I think it was also just a kind of an exercise for me, in changing gears from being, most of my films have been pretty heavy-hitting dramas and social justice films, so I wanted to take a stab at directing kind of an action film,
It worked out.
Well, thank you. Yeah.
This is kind of just for everybody. I know you had already mentioned about the difficulties on your set with people having their emotional stuff, but what was the biggest obstacle to overcome for each of your films when it came to actors, scheduling, editing, whatever it may be?
Guys, let's go first.
David's like, we had no problems.
Easy
It was
peasy.
great.
The best film ever.
Perfect shoot.
Well, interestingly, one of the things I think that was difficult for us was in post-production, in finding the right music, the right composer to go with it. And we, had some people that were going to do something for it. It didn't work out. Tried somebody else. It didn't work out. And when you talk about the importance of going to film festivals, at another film festival, met a guy that said, asked what I had coming up. I told him about assisted living, said, I'm having trouble finding a composer. He's like, well, I know a guy that could maybe help you out in that. Gave me his name, connected with him, and we were really kind of on the same page as far as what we wanted. And I really think the score works out really well and adds a lot to this film. But it was problematic finding that right person for a while.
Interesting.
I think with retirement day, I think it was just, we shot it all in one day. So
Oh, wow.
it was one of those, let's,
Nice, man.
just, get it done in one day. Let's try to make an emotional piece because we got to get Bill back on the road to Fort Worth. I also will stress the importance of attending film festivals. This is the final screening of Festival Run for Retirement Day in Oklahoma. It actually, the concept of it became a concept at another film festival in Oklahoma. Bill comes running up to me and he's like, I have this idea for a movie, Cedric, and I want you to direct it. And it's about a guy that kills himself. That's all I got.
Oh.
No problem.
So I'm like, okay. So,
He's retired.
just a long drive home from Muskogee, Oklahoma to San Antonio, Texas. And I have the world's saddest playlist. And so there were these two songs that kept coming on, and then it was born. So definitely go to film festivals, Hit your stuff.
For us, I would say it was also the same. We shot it all in one day. So it was like a 20-hour day with everything. We shot in Western Illinois, so outside of Chicago, about 2.5, 3 hours. Timing, trying to get certain things shot at certain times. I really wanted to use the magic hour to show off, especially exteriors and the passage of time and things like that. But we knew that we were on kind of a breakneck schedule with a small crew, but it was like that's why for our piece, very limited dialogue. I saved the dialogue pretty much, other than her saying help, to the very end, because, I knew that we had to kind of move in a short amount of time. So that was definitely a challenge for us.
I've got a question for you. I know I may be a novice, but what do you mean by magic hour?
So there are 2 hours in the course of a day. There is the hour just before the sun rises and the hour just before the sun sets. It is called magic hour. You can see it in my film a little bit. When she's driving along and we do some exteriors of the sun setting and things like that, the light is perfect at that hour, either before or after the sunrise, sunset. So it makes everything magic. Your actors look brilliant. If you ever see American Graffiti, the end of the movie was all shot in magic hour. And George Lucas he spent like 3-4 weeks because you only have 1 hour to shoot. So you can't really mess things. Well, if you do mess things up, you got to come back tomorrow and do it. So that's why for us, we were really under a time crunch because it was like, okay, we need these exteriors and these things shot between this hour because that's all I get. And after the sun sets, now we can move into a different portion. So it was almost like shooting 3 separate movies over the course of one day. You're trying to get the bulk of your stuff during the day, but then you need these very specific times to shoot these very specific things, and then you can move into your kind of third act of your film. Yeah.
Thanks for explaining.
Sure.
Anyone else? All right. Thank you, Block 1. Starting us off.
Thank you for coming. Oh, I just wanted to say one thing that I really loved about the block itself is the music in a lot of the pieces. I know for myself it was trying to find a really wonderful composer, which I was very lucky to do. But I wanted to comment on Cedric's piece because your use of quiet, like there were moments where there was no noise, no dialogue, no nothing, and it worked so beautifully. Mm-hmm. That, when music, accented it or things like that, it was just like, boom, it hit even more. So it was like, an emotional rush every single time where it's like, okay, nothing. And that's the power of film sometimes. We want, when it first happened, I was like, was that a bit of a glitch, in the Matrix? But I'm like, no, he's choosing this, And so that I thought was a really brilliant move on your take, because especially with yours as well, like your score really helped the pace of your film. So I just wanted to say that you all did a really wonderful job in choosing, pieces that could show off really cool things that hopefully you all saw as well.
We're going to see so many more great films this weekend. I'm excited. All right, guys. Thanks so much.
Thank you.